Hi BookTube, this is Lindsay from Lindsay Reads. Today I'm going to be talking about the books I read this last week. I read 6 books, and sorry if you can hear my cat purring because she's cuddling with me again. I think it's because it's cold this weekend, and so she wants the extra warmth. So let's get into the books. The first book I read, let's see, make the picture smaller, is The Dakota Winters by Tom Barbash. The Winters is talking about this family, but the Dakota, as you can see from the picture, is an apartment building in New York. It's set in the late 1970s and the early 1980s, and it's about this Winters family. The dad is a talk show host, a famous talk show host, and the son is like the main character is Anton Winters, and he kind of grows up in this celebrity environment. Even though he's like starts out pretty young working with his father, it really focuses on like how he's influencing the dad, how he's like, setting up interviews for him, how he's helping him with his jokes and his lines. And it's also the other like main character, I guess you would say, was the apartment, the Dakota, because it's focusing a lot on his neighbors, the celebrities he's interacting with, especially John Lennon, which is his neighbor in the apartment, and Yoko Ono. And I'm not a music person at all, but reading this book made me want to listen to the Beatles music, and so I was listening to that as I was reading this book. So yeah, it was really, it shows like a really like a highlights of this early 80s and late 70s. It was fun to read about how he's going on vacation with the Lennons, and it talks about the Kennedys and Ted Kennedy. And so yeah, it was an interesting historical book. This next book is, even though it's an Amish fiction book, it isn't historical fiction, which is what I mainly read when I'm reading Amish fiction. But this is a contemporary Amish book called The Letters by Suzanne Woods Fisher. It's the first book in the Inn at Eagle Hill series, and it's about a family who's living on a farm, and they're really struggling with money because the dad has died, and so the mother is put the burden on her to provide income for the family, and so she decides to set up an inn as like a bed and breakfast, and it's like a split between focusing on the Amish families, and it's also contemporary talking about this woman who's coming in from the city who is trying to get away from the daily struggles of life. And she is dealing with relationship issues, and so she's trying to find like an asylum. Is that the right word? Like a peaceful place to go to recover from what she's going through with her past. I don't want to give too much away about what's going on with her, but it's mainly to do with her husband, how she's struggling to stay married with him. She's considering getting divorced, and so this Amish family, I don't think they believe in divorce or not. I know they're like Christian based, but it's focused on she's going into this Amish community, and even though the Amish and they're like pure people, they don't use electricity, and they're really focused on Bible studies. But it was an interesting Amish book because it isn't all they're not all angels, I guess you would say, because it's really focusing on the flaws of the Amish family, how the children in this house, they're lying, and they're working curfews, and they're some of them are drinking, some of them are cutting up and talking back, and so it was kind of like a interesting take on from what I've read from other Amish books. This next book is The Cafe by the Sea by Jenny Colgan, and this is a summer seaside kitchen book. I guess it's a book in a series. It's about Flora, who has escaped her hometown on a Scottish island. She's not getting along with her family. She thought she's never going to go back, and so she escapes to London to live in the city, and she's working as a paralegal with her boss, who she has a huge crush on. And of course, the company she works with decides they're going to set up a windmill factory, And so she's like kind of like forced to go back to this town that she decided she would never go back to. And it's about, you know, reconciling with the family and the relationship she has with the boss. I wasn't too fond of this book, if I have to be honest. The boss wasn't a nice guy. The woman was okay. I don't know. Just the writing, it was okay for me. I know she's published another book. It was called The Bookshop on the Corner. I might give that one a shot, but this one didn't really do much for me. It was just an okay read. This next book is kind of like the opposite. I really appreciated this book, Cosmos by Carl Sagan. And I had no idea that this was also a TV show, and so I'll have to check that out. But this is all about, you know, it's really focusing on like the history of science, for the most part, is what I'm gathering, because it's all about how, you know, our thinking has evolved over time from like ancient times to 1980 when this was published. And it was so interesting to really like focus, because I've as a kid, you know, reading, you know, not reading, but in the science classes, you know, they talk about, you know, how, you know, we initially thought the Earth was like the center of the universe, and, you know, the sun was revolving around the Earth. But reading it now as an adult, like the way Carl Sagan writes, it was really easy to pick up and learn, and, you know, it wasn't too overly complicated, especially for a new person like me. We're learning about, reading about the, you know, the universe and how it was created. But for sure, I want to pick up some books set in like current time, written in like the current times, because I know the technology has changed a lot since 1980. And even what they were able to accomplish up at that point is just amazing to me, because, you know, now we have the internet and we have, you know, personal computers that don't take up, you know, a whole room. And Carl Sagan is a really good writer. I do want to pick up more of his books. It focuses a lot on the 2 satellites that he sent out. He helped work on Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. You know, it talks about how, you know, he's getting pictures, and how the satellites are traveling through space, and how, you know, they want to hopefully be able to develop satellites that are and a spacecraft to work at, you know, the speed of high speed, so they can go through the universe. And so it was, if you're interested in reading about space and learning about the universe, then this would be a really good place to start, I think. This next book, I was trying to read some romance books because I know it's February, but like the other romance book, this one again didn't do much for me. It's Mrs. Mike. It has a wintry cover, and it was written by Benedict Freeman and Nancy Freeman. This book, it was set, as you can see from the snow, it was, you know, set in a winter climate. It's set in Canada, and when it was when it was just territories, and it's about a woman who is from Boston, and she's traveling to visit her uncle, stay with her uncle, because she's having problems with like pleurisy, and so she meets Mike. And it's his first name, it isn't his last name, so I don't know why it's called Mrs. Mike. But anyway, after like 2 or 3 times, she gets married to him, and she's 16, and he's 27 or 28. And there's no lead up to the relationship. It's just they meet, they're married, and then he takes her off into the wilderness. And it was a really hard relationship to believe in, because it's more of like a child-father relationship, if anything. But we're constantly told that he has pretty eyes, and that's really like the main reason that we're given that she loves him. And he's like, you know, stern character, and he's, even though she's like a child from a city, he takes her off into this wilderness, and she's supposed to live through it. And so it's kind of like a gruesome book, actually, because it's a lot of death, there's murder, you know, there's a lot of blood and gore. So it was kind of like a weird book for me. I've read books, you know, set in like the Northwest Territories, you know, in the winter times, but this book didn't really. It had too much going on for me to enjoy it. The portrayal of, you know, Native Americans, the portrayal of women in this book, it was not for me. This next book is another romance, the last book I finished. was Debbie May Comer's Between Friends. And this is about two girls who, it starts off when they're very young, and it goes throughout their life until like they're like 50 or 60 years old. And it starts out in the 50s, and the two characters are Jillian and Leslie. And it's about how they grow up and their friendship, but it's mainly focused on their adult life. Leslie gets married really, really young, and it's about her struggles with the children she has and dealing with money and the husband, and they're trying to find jobs at a young age with children. And then Jillian, it's like kind of the opposite. She goes off to New York to become a lawyer, and she's like a high-flying career, and she's more like put together. So it's kind of like the dichotomy between those two, and it's mainly focused on letter writing between them, and then it switches to email as time goes on in like the 2000s. And it was a nice, fun read. It wasn't too in-depth and difficult read. It was a light read that I wanted to pick up after reading that science book. So these are the books I read this week. It was kind of like a mashup of books I really enjoyed and books I didn't. Hopefully, as this month goes on, maybe I can find a romance book that I actually enjoyed. Between Friends has a little bit of romance, but it's mostly focused on the friendship. So yeah, these are the books I read. Let me know if you've read any of these and what your opinions are on them. But I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.